name is Elizabeth Garrett. I'm in Communication 333. I never believed in Santa Claus. None of us kids did. Mom and Dad refused to let us. They couldn't afford expensive presents, and they didn't want us to think that we weren't as good as the other kids who, on Christmas morning, found all sorts of fancy toys under the trees that were supposedly left by Santa Claus. So they told us all about how the other kids were deceived by their parents, how the toys the grown-ups claimed were made by little elves wearing bell caps in their workshop at the North Pole actually had labels on them saying "Made in Japan." Try not to look down on those other children, Mom said. It's not their fault that they've been brainwashed into believing silly myths. If you cannot get rid of family skeleton, you may as well make it dance, by George Bernard Shaw. This statement is true for Jeanette Walls. Instead of hiding her past, she tells about it in her writings. Here's a story of triumph against all odds, but also a tender, moving tale of unconditional love in her family that, despite of its profound flaws, gave her the fiery determination to carve out successful life on her own terms. I will be performing The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls. Dad lost his mind at the Gypsum mine after getting in an argument with the foreman, and on Christmas came that year, we had no money at all. On Christmas Eve, Dad took each of us kids out into the desert night, one by one. I had a blanket wrapped around me, and when it was my turn, I offered to share it with Dad, but he said no thanks. The cold never bothered him. I was 5 that year, and I sat next to Dad, and we looked up at the sky. Dad loved to talk about the stars. He explained to us how it rotated through the night sky as the earth turned. He taught us to identify the constellations and how to navigate through the North Star. Those shining stars, he'd like to point out, were one of the special treats for people like us who lived out in the wilderness. Rich city folks, he'd say, lived in fancy apartments, but their air was so polluted they couldn't even see the stars. We'd have to be out of our minds to want to trade places with any of them. Pick out your favorite star, Dad said that night. He told me I could have it for keeps. He said it was my Christmas present. You can't give me a star, I said. No one owns the stars. That's right, Dad said. No one owns them. You just have to claim it before anyone else does. Like that Dago fellow Columbus claimed America for Queen Isabella. Claiming a star as your own has every bit much logic to it. I thought about it, and Dad was right. He was always right. He was always figuring out things like that. I could have any star I wanted, Dad said. Except Beetlejuice and Wriggle, because Lori and Brian had already claimed that one. I looked up the stars, and I tried to figure out which one was the best one. You could see hundreds, maybe thousands, or even millions twinkling in the clear desert sky. The longer you looked, the more your eyes adjusted to the dark, the more stars you'd see. Layer after layer of them gradually becoming visible. There was one in particular, in the west, above the mountains, but low in the sky, that shone more brightly than all the rest. I want that one, I said. Dad grinned. That's Venus, he said. Venus was only a planet, he went on, pretty dinky compared to real stars. She looked bigger and brighter because she was much closer than the other stars. Poor old Venus didn't even make her own light, Dad said. She shone only from reflected light. He explained to me that planets glow because fascinating light was constant and stars twinkled because their light pulsed. I like it anywhere, I said. I had admired Venus even before that Christmas. You could see it in the early evening, glowing on the western horizon. And if you got up early, you could still see it the morning after the stars had disappeared. What the hell, Dad said. It's Christmas. You can have a planet if you want. And he gave me Venus.